Hello, I'm David D. Cosmo, and this is Preview, a public affairs presentation of Electric City Television. We continue to broadcast from home, our guest joining us by computer video link. And our guest for today's program is Chris Fetchko. Chris, among other things, is a motion picture producer and director, a writer as well. He's been involved in 3 motion picture productions, the latest all in time, photographed primarily in the Wyoming Valley area. We're talking with Chris today about the situation facing the movie industry, our local theaters, the industry itself, and the distribution of the movies you watch, either in a theater or nowadays at your home.
And I'm very concerned about the movie business in this conversation, but obviously I want to put in perspective that this is more serious than movies. You know, there's a lot of people that are going through a lot of trouble, and it's. I want people to be aware that it's just a silly movie. That being said, we are asked to stay home and do other things and watch TV, etc. And we need content, right?
Yeah. So
by no ways am I saying that filmmakers are on the front lines or anything like that, but I think thank God we have Netflix and all the content at home right now to help us get through what we need to do to get through. With that being said, as far as the theaters go, I don't know anything more than anybody else, right? Because the theater business was on the edge of the cliff before this happened. Few reasons. I don't know if you remember Paramount in the old Hollywood system. Paramount Pictures, for example, would be able to produce a film, but then they would have a theater in New York, the Paramount Theater, etc. They would own the whole supply chain and the distribution. In 1942, the Supreme Court said that was a monopoly, and they said no longer can movie studios distribute their own movies. So it had to be owned separately. In November of 2019, the Justice Department started the process of making that order invalid, which means somebody such as Netflix, well, Netflix is a bad example, but let's go back to Paramount. Paramount could then go back and buy a movie theater, produce it, and then put it in a theater.
Right.
Okay? That was in process before the new year. So the pandemic, it just even put more of an earthquake into the whole thing for obvious reasons. There's been even for the last 5 to 10 years, there's been talk of can you release a movie at the same time as at home and at the theater at the same time? It's called day and date.
Okay.
And they've been doing that before the pandemic. Smaller films. And it works for certain films. It doesn't work for others. The movie business was heading in a direction where, in my opinion, it was all big tentpole movies. Superman, Batman. Franchises. These movies cost hundreds of millions of dollars to market. If you're going to have a big, which means you have to spend and you have to make, a movie that's worth that much money to market, which means people get nervous about what to put that money into, so they go after known quantities, such as Fast and Furious. We're up to how many? I lost count. Fast and Furious 10 or 11, because that movie makes money,
Yeah, and big name actors in those cases.
Yeah, big name actors, and like Tom Cruise, how many Mission Impossibles has he done since, etc. So from my standpoint, I love movies. I love movies. I think a lot of people love movies, but the question is how many people love going to the movies? I love going to the movies because it forces me to put my phone in the pocket, shut it off, the lighting, the fact that you got popcorn, excuse me. It's an experience.
You're right.
For me. I actually, as much as I love movies, have a hard time watching movies at home because I get distracted too much. I know a movie's really good for me if I could sit at home and watch it in one setting.
Right. But now you have movies that are, you mentioned, people are now watching on Netflix. There are several other options online. But I'm wondering now, is that going to become the norm rather than going to the theater?
That goes back to what we were just saying. So if I were a betting man, I would bet that Amazon buys AMC movie theaters in the next 6 months. AMC movie theaters is in a very serious cash flow crunch, as is all small businesses. But if Amazon goes, and Amazon, obviously, we all know how big Amazon is, and they basically did the same thing with grocery stores. They bought Whole Foods. They've been buying up everything. So if this Justice Department law goes through, which I think it will, then I think Amazon will say buy a movie theater chain. Now, what that will do is that gives Amazon more control to make bigger movies, because some movies you just have to show in a theater, right?
Yeah.
People want to see those kind of special effects, big movies. And what I don't know if you followed, there was a movie, it was an animated film. It was the sequel to the movie Trolls. It was due to come out right when the pandemic shut things down.
That was an animated movie, right?
It was an animated movie. It was a big movie, big successful movie. So Universal, which is the production company that put that movie out, basically said, okay, the heck with the theaters. We're just going to put it up at home, and you pay $20 to rent it. Because if you're going to take a family of 4, $20 is a steal,
right,
to rent it at home. Because the movie theaters freaked out. The movie theaters went to Universal and said, hey, we're not going to show any of your movies if you do this again. We need to have what's referred to as a theatrical window, meaning when a movie comes out, it's got to play in theaters before. Remember the old days, you had to wait 6 months before the film got to Blockbuster, and then it went to TV, and if you wait long enough, it's on, it goes to cable, free, like HBO, and if you wait longer, it goes to free TV, and before you know it, you're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, that's the way it used to be, yeah.
Yeah, that's called windows, and what's happening is all the windows are collapsing, and that was happening before the pandemic, right? So now you have that situation. Now, I think the big cinemas it's going to be a battle between the creators, the movie creators, the producers, and the movie theaters to see who needs each other more. Obviously, the movie theaters need content, right? And I think the edge goes to the content creators because of the current pandemic, the fact that people are doing home watching before this. Look at the Irishman.
Yeah.
They look at the Irishman. They're the streamers, meaning Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. They're in a whole different business game. They're trying to just keep people paying monthly and not canceling their subscription, right? Yeah. So they threw $160 million at the Irishman because they wanted that cachet, and I posted something online when that movie came out. It was the first time in my life that I was excited to watch a movie, and I waited at midnight and I went and I watched it because I wanted to see it, because it wasn't because it was only in a few, which leads us to another discussion. They only played it in independent cinemas. I don't think, I don't know if it played around here in Cinemark, but a lot of the independent theaters, right, is a whole different thing, which typically supports smaller films like I make, right? There's a county theater down in Doylestown, for example, which played my film All in Time. And they only play art house films. When you drive by, even if you're following the film business, there's always a film or two that you have no idea what it's all about, right? And they have a loyal following, and they kind of curate, their tastemakers, So what's happening is, so places like that got the Irishman because the bigger movie theaters didn't want to play ball with Netflix because of this battle that we were talking about. So the smaller movie theaters, what they're doing in this time is they're basically being a portal online to say to smaller films, hey, come to my website, I'm promoting Doylestown because they're a big supporter of mine. I don't know. Maybe up in Tunkhannock, they're doing this. I'd have to check.
The Dietrich Theater in Tunkhannock.
My one film premiered up there. Actually, both films played up there. But a lot of these independent theaters that have a loyal following, that just these are the kind of theaters where people go to. And they basically say, I don't know what's playing, but it's something worth seeing because it's at this theater.
Well, let me ask you this, though, Chris. Even if things, quote, reopen, chances are the local movie theater, whether it's the Cinemark or the Dietrich, chances are they're going to have to limit their audience to where you have to sit 6 seats apart or 7 seats apart. And I'm wondering if that very fact alone can hurt their survival.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, just let me finish, which leads into this. So what these local theaters are doing is they're basically being a portal, and you're basically renting the films through them. Ah. So right now, you and I tonight could go to Doylestown Theater online and get these movies, and that's how they're trying to stay alive in these tough times. Because as we know, these smaller theaters are community run or small businesses. They're not big corporations, and everyone's in it together. Every business is affected. But so when it opens up, I don't know how far 6 feet is in terms of movie seats, but that's probably 4 or 5 movie seats, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, it changes the whole experience. I was watching a comedian the other night on TV being interviewed, and he was talking about comedy clubs. And he was saying that the comedy clubs are so small and packed in on purpose because you need that for comedy. You need to be on top of one another, And, if you go with a friend or a date or something to the movies, right?
Yeah.
Not to make a joke, but I have a hard enough time making a move on a girl if she's sitting next to me, let alone 6 feet away,
Sure.
But it changes the whole experience. So I think what's going to ultimately drive the movie theater, same way with Broadway. They said Broadway's going to be the last to come back because they need to fill up those theaters to make a profit because of the live aspect of that show. I think you're going to get some people that just want to get out and go to a movie theater, but I don't think they're going to be able to make it worthwhile until this all gets back to normal, whatever that means, whether it's a vaccine, etc., or because the economics are the big movie theater companies, right?
Right.
They're not going to release these movies. Think about before the pandemic. Everybody talks about box office. This movie bombed at the box office. This movie, made $150 million, right? Well, the movies that are already made that are scheduled, they were counting on full theaters on a good day, right? So now the only thing that they could do is they could show the movie 150 times a day. Maybe people are going at 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that, which they do, by the way, when they have big, Superman or Star Wars or whatever. People line up for days and they have midnight showings on the opening nights and all that stuff. But the key to the movie theaters, in my opinion, goes back to the content creators. There needs to be movies to be played in the theaters.
Right.
That's the first thing.
Now, is anybody making movies right now?
No. I mean, I'm sure somebody somewhere is making a movie, but they're not doing it on a scale that's with official actors or anything like that. The only production I've heard of that's actually rolling film is over in England. The BBC's doing something with one of their shows, and they're quarantining the entire crew and cast, which I can't even imagine the logistics involved in that. It might be a small show. I don't know much about it. But the problem, there's maybe a 1.5, 2 year lag. For example, Ghostbusters was scheduled to come out this summer, right? They pushed it to next summer, right? So they have content created that could probably last them for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
but nothing's happening right now. Everything is shut down. I spent all of 2019 getting my next film together. And on March 23rd, I was going to be getting on a plane for the West Coast because we're doing that film out there. And when I say we, it takes a village. I have a partner, Christy Lash, who you've met, another Hazelton native. We had everything almost ready to go. And it's a movie, you know from working with me on all the time, there's so many moving pieces that there's a matter of luck that takes over. And thank God the timing worked out that, this happened before we went out there. Because I'm a small company, we're a small film, we don't have the cash flow. I mean, to shut down a production and put it back up is a lot of money. So as far as getting productions back up and running, there's obviously, you were seeing the Zoom kind of stuff with the late night shows and Saturday Night Live, and they're getting better at it, but no, this isn't a movie. I mean, no offense to you, this is not like this is not the real thing, You're not going to see there's a bunch of extremes. You could start off immediately, right? But the problem is, I don't know, how much more time do we have? Because
we've got another 10 minutes or so.
All right, well, let me stop me if I'm boring you. But what happens on a movie without a pandemic, which this is the only one I've ever seen, as all of us, right? On a normal movie shoot before the pandemic, you have to insure your main actors, right? So, God forbid, let's say you have Tom Cruise playing in your movie, and it's a 6-week shoot, and he's in every scene, and 3 weeks into it, something happens to him and he can't work, gets killed, whatever. You have to have an insurance policy to basically pay you to go back and reshoot those scenes with a different actor. Okay?
Now that's something behind the scenes people don't realize.
Right, and so you could have the government, the president, anybody in the world say, we are ready to go back. Let's start shooting. No one's doing a thing until the insurance underwriters write those policies, or the industry is so desperate that they're willing to do. You know how you buy an insurance policy and you get an exclusion? Like it doesn't cover flood or something like that. They might put right into the thing, we're not going to cover coronavirus, But same example, what if Tom Cruise is on set and his wife or somebody gets the virus and he's got to self-quarantine for 14 days. Now you have 100 people on a crew on location somewhere sitting around waiting for this guy to come out of quarantine. And then even if you want to do 6 feet distance, think about, as you know from work, I'm sorry if I'm pointing my pen at you, by the way. This is normal. I don't even realize who I'm supposed to be looking up here at the camera. This is my first video interview in about 3 years, Dave. But when you make a movie, sometimes the camera's a foot away from the actor, and there's 3 people operating the camera: the guy pulling focus, the assistant, the operator. You have a lot of intimacy, no pun intended, even with, kissing scenes, stuff like that. But you have a lot of, you have makeup people.
Well, as an example, when you did All in Time, which was filmed almost 99% in the Wyoming Valley area,
right.
That was what we would consider a small production. How many people were involved in All in Time? Roughly.
Oh, well, when we were shooting on set every day there was an average. There's a couple big days where we had a couple hundred extras, but on an average day it's about 100 people.
100 people. So
100 people.
So even to do what we would call a small production, you've got a big crowd, and under these circumstances, you just can't do it.
Yeah. Now I have my phone here, right? And I could make a little movie right now, which I'm actually doing for fun, right? And you could maybe if this thing goes on long enough, you might see a whole genre of films come out of this. There's been some films done that were shot just on the iPhone, really small and scale. I mean, remember the Blair Witch Project? I mean, that was that was a very, very small film,
sort of a whole movie.
Yeah, it's like a whole movie. So anything's possible. People need content. But what's going to be interesting is how long does it take for the bigger movies to get back up and running, to get back to bring the whole thing back to the movie theaters? Until you can get the big, what they call tentpole movies, whether it's, you know, the superhero movies or what, all that stuff. That's what I think you need for the bigger theaters. And then the smaller theaters, we need to make sure that people support them. And maybe, I think the smaller theaters have a chance of surviving more so than the independent theater, or the chain theaters, because of what I told you. Because true film fans go, it's like living in New York and you go to the Blue Note. You're a jazz fan, but you have no idea who's playing. But you're going to go to the Blue Note and spend the night there. You know what I mean? It's like, so those people I think would be more apt to go and say, hey, you know what? We're going to sit 6 feet apart. We're going to, figure it out. Or they might just say, you know what? We're going to go to Doylestown's website, the county theater's website, and rent the movie there and stay at home.
I think
who knows? If I knew what was going to happen, Dave, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I would be busy trying to take over the world, because no one knows. It's like, it's going to be the wild, wild west, you know?
I think we're all hoping, as you and I are both movie fans, and I think we're all hoping that eventually the theater experience is going to come back. But it may take a little longer than just reopening your neighborhood shoe store.
Well, it's the same as, exactly, and it's the same as baseball. What if they start playing baseball without fans, which I think they may or may not be doing? I'm not following very closely.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen, yeah.
That's going to change. Even the person that likes watching baseball at home is going to be affected by that, because the crowd is part of the game. You know, there's no hometown advantage.
Yeah.
If you in sport, so everything is going to be different, and I think I don't know I'm not sure that, when did the Jazz Singer come out? Was it 1927, 28?
Yeah, well, see, around then, because it was the first with sound, and actually the sound wasn't actually on the film. It was a record that the projectionist had to time.
Right. So look at it. So there was obviously vaudeville and all that before that, but what was the Spanish flu in the 1718?
1918 or so, yeah.
Now that's a whole different projection, but the movie business went to a new level after that last pandemic, right? I think the movie business is going to go to a new level after this pandemic. We just don't know what that is. We don't know if it's going to be good or bad. It might be that movies become something like the circus, where there's one theater and a film only shows one time in a town, and everybody has to go at one point because of the economics of marketing, all that stuff. It might be that movie theaters literally go bankrupt. I mean, how are they going to survive? They're not making any money.
Yeah, one has actually closed down near the Lehighton area. I'm hoping that doesn't happen with others, but it is a possibility, of course. So, and what about a production company like yourself? You just have to be on hold indefinitely now?
Yeah. Well, no. A couple of things. On the flip side of all this stuff, I think, look at how crazy the 60s were from the cultural aspects. Civil rights, assassination, sexual revolution, war, all that stuff, right? 5-6 years later, look at the movies that came out. Apocalypse Now, Mississippi Mud. Look, all of your great movies. Well, not all of them, but some of your best movies came out of the '60s. They weren't made till Apocalypse Now. You know what I'm talking about. Apocalypse Now was made, I think it came out in '79, right? But that wasn't set in '79. So it's gonna. So you have on all kind of entertainment aspects of areas. You have all these artists at home not knowing what to do, and I think you're going to have a whole revolution of creativity because everybody literally has to just sit home and do something, So as far as my production company goes, I actually took this opportunity to sit back. You're always rushing to get the film. You're always catching up, playing catch up. So we took a pause because it's not like we took a pause. We were told to take a pause. Everybody has, But even, obviously we're in, you and I are talking from Pennsylvania right now, and there's debate county by county who's opening up and all that stuff. In my particular business, it's not up to me. It's up to the unions and the insurance companies because of what we talked about. Because that's the kind of films, you know what I mean? Now, I'm going to go with my iPhone and maybe learn how to use that better than I did, and film some fun stuff if this keeps going on, because I do want to be creative. But that's the bad part. The good part is you're never finished writing a script. You just at some point you just stop working on it and start filming it, right? So this has given me more time. I thought I had a script that was ready to go on the 23rd of March. And I haven't changed much, but I've been making tweaks to it in the last couple of weeks, and I'm thankful because it gave me more time. So smaller films have the luxury. Smaller films typically don't have the luxury of more time. So now this is kind of leveling the playing field. What's going to happen when they reopen? Let's just say we get to that magical point for the film business. I think it's going to phase in, as we talked about. But think about how backed up all these productions are. There's so many movies. There's crew that's going to be scrambling for work. There's actors that are going to be scrambling. I actually think it's going to be tough to get a physical camera, because all the productions are going to be out at the same time.
Bottom line, as we run out of time here, though, is that you're still optimistic that the movies will survive.
I think where we're headed is movies are going to come out online, at home, and in the theater at the same time, and it's going to be up to you whether you want to make a night out of it or if you want to stay at home. Kind of like baseball. Do we want to watch the Phillies play tonight on home, or do we want to go take a drive down to Philadelphia and get a hot dog and sit in the stands?
I'm hoping, Chris, that in less than that time we'll be viewing your latest production, and hopefully we'll do it at a local movie theater with popcorn in hand.
Listen, the movie will play. The Kirby Center was where we premiered our last film. I love those guys down there, and we're all in this together. We're all trying to support each other, and one way or the other, that the next project we do is going to play in Wilkes-Barre. It's I'm not going to give it away at all in terms of the setting, but it's going to play in Wilkes-Barre, and you'll understand why.
Okay.
But not just because of the movie, just because I want to support those local things, and I would love to be at the Kirby Center.
Okay.
And I hope they survive.
Chris Fetchko, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and keep those cameras rolling as soon as you can.
I will. Thank you, sir. Stay safe.
Yeah, right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Chris. And thank you for joining us on Preview. I'm David DeCosmo. Until we see you again next time, here's hoping all your news is good.